we go. Yep. It says got it.
Got it.
Hi, my name is Jeff Tice. Welcome to the Meta Arizona Social Equity Deep Dive. We're in module number 21, the art of selecting your business partner. As I said, my name is Jeff Tice. I've been in the industry for about 10 years. Early in 2011, I was sitting in your chairs thinking about applying, thinking about how to identify partners and create a partnership and go after this new industry. And we were fortunate enough to be one of those lucky lottery balls. And we opened multiple dispensaries and grow facilities, and ultimately within our own partnerships, some things happen. I'll get into some detail a little bit later. But it's very interesting that with my own experience and those that I've got on the panel today of what happens within a partnership, and there truly is an art. There's no science involved, and we know with any art, sometimes you crumple up the clay and you start over. But let me introduce my two panelists for today. I want to start with Robert Branscombe. And Robert, take a few moments, introduce yourself, the business that you're in today, and how you're in the cannabis business.
Thank you very much. My name is Robert Branscombe. I've been in the industry now for about a couple of years now. I helped bring to market a brand called LePay, and did some other things within there. It's from trying to acquire financing to doing insurance, which is my main business now. I have the ability to insure anything in the cannabis industry, from the grow to dispensaries to product delivery. I know this is a fascinating industry, and the growth has exponentially jumped in the last few years. And I think it's very important that in that growth, and when you're trying to get into the market, that you should be prepared properly and know what the steps are to encounter before you get into the business, because a lot of this stuff no one tells you, and you kind of fumble your way through it. But once you know the right roadmap and know the resources to have, you know, it's a great industry to be in. I found it very rewarding, and I've met a lot of people, a lot of good people, and with varied backgrounds and how they got into the industry, and it was great to know that. And I'm just looking forward to this industry growing and making sure that, you know, everyone has the ability to get into this business and make money, but also give back to the communities and those individuals who are greatly affected by it. So thank you for letting me be a part of this panel today, Jeff.
Awesome. It's great to have you here. If you don't mind me asking, I want to ask a little bit on the insurance topic for a moment, because a lot of times when insurance needs come to us, it's confusing. And especially in cannabis, and as a CPA, I find many of the things confusing. But when you say a full spectrum of insurance, so are you dealing with the other cannabis license holders now? And what are some of the products potentially or insurance thoughts that someone listening might want to consider?
Well, one of the things that's happened recently is the insurance industry has finally come to terms that the marijuana business is a legitimate business, and it needs the proper kind of coverages for those businesses. There's coverages going from the growers, if I start from that place, from insuring the crop, the building, the employees, the vehicles, anything that has to do with that operation, there's insurance product for. You go to the dispensary, same thing for the building, for the employees, for the payroll, for the workman's comp. For anyone that has a just packaging or anything like that, it's important to have those coverages, because you have to treat it like a real business now. This is not like a fly-by-night or kind of like underground. This has matured and come to fruition to be a business industry that hopefully here soon it will be legalized across the country. And so the insurance industry has taken great steps to try and move forward. Now, normally they drag their feet because, you know, they're trying to figure out how they're going to underwrite it and how they're going to attach a risk to these different industries and different businesses. And so there's a few companies that specialize in it, but you're seeing more and more of the admitted companies, to say, to say, are starting to offer products and services for the company. And one of the biggest ones right now is the products. Because if you have a product and doing CBD or doing marijuana, and someone gets sick, they might want to sue you. And so you want to have protection against that, because they might accuse you that your product wasn't decently tested or passed the certain protocols to make sure it was safe for individuals to take. So,
well, I hope everyone heard between the lines a little bit. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't matter whether you have a license or that you're directly involved with what we call leaf touching activities. There's many opportunities in cannabis for what we call ancillary services, and you name some: packaging and delivery, and many of the trades, just like yourself, an insurance expert will call you, and have converted and created an additional line of business specific to cannabis and the risks that are there.
and that's the great thing about this industry now, is that you don't have to, like you said, touch the leaf. There's so many different things or different aspects of the business that you can do to be involved in the business, help generate income, and provide a great service for the business industry. And so the insurance industry, as I said before, has taken great steps to make sure that they can properly give you the right type of coverages for your risks, to make sure that in the case of something does happen, you can protect yourself personally from the risk and have your business be the one that be held accountable for it, because that's what insurance is for. Insurance is the transfer of risk, right? Yep. You don't want the risk on you. You don't want to sell your house and do all the other stuff just to pay off a lien or a judgment or against you. You have the business there. The business is its own entity. Let it stand, insure it properly. And, no one looks to do something wrong, have something wrong happen to them. But you know what? My advice is, I'm the Grim Reaper. I have to look at all the things that could happen and make sure that you're protected against it.
That's a great point, because one of the worst statements that you can have after something bad happens is, "Are we covered?" Yeah. Rather than, "Let's call Robert, we're covered." Having said that, also, let me move over to Jim Valenzuela. Jim is very well known in the business community here, and both these gentlemen very respected and have built that respect over the years. But Jim, introduce yourself, some of the things you've done, and specifically what's going on in your world today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff. Appreciate the invite to this, and with yourself and Robert. And I'm Jim Valenzuela. I'm the CEO and founder of a company that I recently started up called Oral Leaf HR. Oral Leaf HR provides full service HR solutions. That would be payroll, HR, timekeeping, anything you want to talk. We're a full service HR solution specifically for the cannabis business. I decided that I wanted to do this. So the challenge in our business is in this HR suite, and the payroll side of it has always been the banking side of it. And that is something that you need to navigate through. And so when I decided I wanted to get into the cannabis space again, because I was introduced to it in 2004 at my previous company, and I'll get into that in a bit, but I wanted to make sure I did it the right way. And the right way was to get a bank that services cannabis for clients. I opened up my own MRB account. I'm a tier 2 account.
MRB?
Having a tier, yeah.
MRB, what's that, Jim?
Marijuana related bank.
Okay,
right?
thank you.
I have business. And so I have my own account. So by virtue of having that account, I'm able to offer a full suite of services to my clients. The biggest one that I can do is obviously direct deposits, because most companies, unless you have an MRB cannabis bank that's providing it, you cannot do direct deposits. There's a myriad of ways people try to circumvent the system, but at the end of the day, if you don't have one doing it that way, they will cut you off sooner or later, and they will give you 2 weeks or maybe one payroll to move and find another provider. The reason I did this is because I knew the bank in town in Arizona that was doing this, and I knew the gentleman there that was the CEO, and so that's what I did. So I opened up my account and started the business again. My previous company where I got introduced to us was a full service HR company also that I ran for about 10 years. And then I sold it to Paychex. I got introduced to the cannabis space in 2014 because my sales folks in the Denver market were actually selling to cannabis folks unbeknownst to me, because I just got the name of the company and they were selling to the management companies, obviously.
Right.
These were very fast growing entities. And suddenly I had, they start with maybe 10, a month later, they're at 30, then they're at 50, 60. Well, inquisitive as I am, and more so even the bank, because we go through the list of clients, and they were a sponsor bank of a private equity deal that they were part of with us and the deal. They go, well, what do these companies do in Colorado that they're growing so fast? This is a great vertical, or you guys hit a great vein. I said, well, let me get up there. I'm going up next week. Let me go meet these clients. Go up there, and a salesman picks him. He goes, oh, by the way, these companies are cannabis. And I said, really? Now you tell me. So I was the Grim Reaper, as Robert says. I had to then go and tell these companies within 2 weeks or a week of knowing this, that I had to terminate their services. But I negotiated with them. I told the bank, hey, listen, it wasn't their fault. It was my sales guy's fault. I have to take some responsibility. Give me a little bit of time to work with these clients to do this the right way. They haven't done anything wrong. They've got a bank that's doing it. But when we found out they were switching banks like every 3 months, it seems like. But they worked with me, and so I was able to do that. But there was there were fast growing businesses. I was fascinated when I went and did a couple of tours of their facilities, and what I saw was vaults with cash and vaults with product back then, and they were very large vaults. And so when I decided I wanted to get back in the business after selling my last one and serving and spending 1 year with the Oasis Paychecks team, and then doing my 1 year non-compete, this is the field I wanted to go into, because I knew it was a field that needed it, and it was a field that needed to do it the right way. That is, paying your taxes, doing your insurance, making sure your employees have everything they need, because this is not the back alley business anymore. This is front and center, and everyone knows about it. And so, like I was saying, it's hard enough running this business with one arm tied behind your bank with regulatory people all over you. Don't help them come after you again. Don't help them do their job, right? So let's do it the right way.
Jim, let me add on just a couple of comments there. As a CPA, I'm capable. I have QuickBooks. I can do my own payroll.
Yep.
But that's not the best thing that I do. Meaning that I'm a believer in highest and best use, and there is a certain expertise required with payroll and being able to file on time, have things accurate, because if they're not, the Department of Revenue or the federal government, IRS, lets you know that it's not right. And sometimes that can be more costly than using an outside agency. And one more thing, I think it's an important point, Jim. Initially in this industry, payroll companies would not service the cannabis, as he's pointed out, but some of the sales folks at the same time would pretend like you weren't a cannabis. And we were so desperate at times for payroll services. If they said that they covered it, they covered it. So I can say honestly, me as a prior license holder, I was kicked out of at least 3 different payroll companies.
And one of them wasn't mine, I don't think.
Yeah.
but I agree with you, and that's just it. And I don't, I still talk to prospects out there, and they're still running with these national firms, and they're just saying, and they just say, listen, we've run for them for 2-3 years. They don't know what we're doing, or they turn a blind eye to it. And I said, I can't tell you whether to be proactive or reactive, but I will tell you, it's always better to be proactive in making the changes to do it, because it's hard to do it when they tell you you've got 2 weeks.
Again, I'll emphasize for those listening in is we've got 2 successful panelists that saw a need and developed a solution for that need, and are working closely in the cannabis industry, and are provided, an insight, and get to work with a lot of great folks. So they're in the cannabis industry, but at the same time, as we said, not leaf touching, but they identified a problem and created a solution for that. And I think that that's an important fact. But let me say that my next question is, throughout your career, then how many partnerships, because now you're in a certain business, how many partnerships have you been involved with over the years? Robert, let me start with you, please.
Oh, over the years, I've probably been involved maybe about 3 or 4 partnerships. Just in as being an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
you start maybe one company by yourself, but you realize sometimes that, you have some other resources or people that can make your business beneficial, and instead of having them as a vendor or just have them as a, business partner. So it's been about 3 or 4 that I've had over the years.
So when, I'll get back to that in a minute. 3 or 4, when I was trying to count myself, I lost count, and it's not a huge number, but I'm thinking it's north of 10, more than 10, and probably fewer than 20. But there were some reasons, for each one. And typically, as you've pointed out, there's a business opportunity, and I looked around, and maybe someone was bringing that opportunity to me, or I had the opportunity and I needed additional expertise or capital or those things. But for me, it was probably a 10, over 10. So that's an interesting number. Jim, how about yourself?
I've probably been about not probably just around 8 to 10. A lot of mine have been obviously since my background, and I've done a lot of higher tech deals and software deals in the past. Also, they were big, whether they were venture backed, structured in Series A, Series B type deals, or the traditional partnership ones. And over the time, probably 8 to 10 of those deals, where
Wow.
where where you have different competing interest from different folks, but you have different expertise from everyone that comes to the table. And so that's where I learned a lot of the navigation of these waters.
Competing interest. What an interest. What a term. That's but Robert, how many partnerships are you in today?
And today, right now, I'm into 2 partnerships. One of them just most recently in the last month or so. And each time you go in these partnerships, you take your experience from the last one and try to not duplicate the same mistake, or at least have the same attributes that made it successful in the past, and apply them. So about two in this last couple months. But I'm looking forward to gaining more here in the future, especially in this industry, because it's growing so fast, and hopefully keep finding business opportunities that come my way, so I can further pursue those.
Well, if it's 2 today, then a couple went away. Why did the other partnerships go away?
Well, sometimes it just comes to a point where either the business has to take a different turn of direction, or is this that the partnership was temporary. You have to realize what you're getting in partnership for in the first place, right? Is a long-term goal, is a short-term goal. As Jim said, is it could be just on one project, or just getting the deal done, or if it's a long-term that this is something that's going to be something we're going to use for the rest of our lives. And so you have to really figure out why you're getting in partnership first, and figure out those details, and then go forward from there.
I like to say sometimes it's always easier to get married than it is divorced, and it's always easier to select partners than it is sometimes. We call it unwinding. But Jim, how many? I'm going to follow up with that same question. Over time, things happen. Project complete. How many are you in today? And maybe give us a little insight into how some of the other partnerships met their fate.
Right. So what ends up happening? So right now I'm in probably three to four. This one that I'm in, I have a couple of investors, large investors in it. They're in a Series A deal that I structured for them because they wanted to be in the deal. They said, no, we want to be in this, and we like this space. So I said, okay, I'll take some of your money.
That's fantastic.
So and the other ones are really more traditional partnerships in real estate that I have an interest in, right? Where I'm a silent partner in that respect, whether it be some restaurant property or something like that, or some other thing like that. So those are the other partnerships I'm in. The partnerships where I was active in, those are real operating entities, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it was an HR company, whether it was a medical device company, was a medical software, whether it was CRM, these are all operating entities where it was to build the business, profitable businesses and then get them to the point where you could then have an exit strategy. That was the point, because I had investors in each one of those. And the job of, as a CFO, as in those companies where I was a CFO or CEO, that was to get my investors a return on their investment. That was very clear to me. So, and that was the way that I could also have a monetize my investment in the deals, right? Was to have an exit strategy. So by doing that, what we were able to do is really create the value. So you create the value in the entity that makes it go. It's not just creating for the sale, but you got to create the entire entity. The entity involves product, it involves people, and those are the hard, the people part is the hardest part of it all, right? So it really is one of those things, but those deals were all exit strategies, and not everyone went well. By the way, some of them were very successful and we did very well. And I will tell you, there's a couple that didn't go well and we lost significant amount of dollars, but you go to your investors and you tell them straight up, it didn't work, market timing, whatever it was, and you move on. But I learned more in those deals than I did in the deals that took off and, paid everyone 20 times their investments.
Nice. You both are, Robert, were you about to say something?
Oh, no, I was just,
Oh,
I
okay.
find it interesting that, if I could comment, I'm sorry.
Please
I find it
do.
interesting that you said the exit strategy. And I think that is probably one of the things you should also consider up front before you get into the business partnership, that, okay, how long we're going to do it and how we're going to get out. And I think a lot of us don't think about that until it's time to get out, and to try and figure out, like, okay, what am I going to do now? How's this going to work?
So I would suggest that those listening, listen again, perhaps, because you both dropped some very important nuggets of advice while you were just talking about the things that you do. For example, Robert, you talked about goals, short-term goal, long-term goals, and Jim, you touched on exit, expectations, things such as that. You also, Jim, you identified a particular partnership where some folks or your partners were bringing some money, and the expectation is that they weren't going to work a whole lot, that it was your baby. You had to make it happen, right?
That's correct. That's generally what in my deals it is. I'm in the operations side of stuff, making it happen. They entrust me with their dollars to make it happen and make their money work.
So they're both saying, Robert and Jim are identifying, and one of the key points here of this this panel is, what do you ask? Because sometimes everybody's excited and you have the same vision. I want to have my business. I want it to go here. I'd like to do this and that. And what are some of the things you would ask those potential partners when you're all sitting around in that initial room, looking around with your concept in mind, and you're the leader, you're the one who really, and first of all, you need to find a leader, but you're the leader at least asking the questions. Robert?
Well, first of all, you got to paint the big picture for everybody. If you're the leader, you got to give them the vision, right? You say, this is what I envision this company, and now, today, in 5 years and 10 years in the future. And this is why I'm going to business. And I think this is what we can provide, a service or a product for those individuals and people. And tell me, where do you see this company going in those 1 to 5 or 3, 1, 5 or 10 years period? Because we all have to have the big picture in mind. We all have to see it. Most people like myself, we're very visual. You can put it right on paper, but sometimes it just takes too much time to read it. We have to verbalize it, show it, put it in pictures, do something. So once we all get it out and get it together, we know how to form a plan to get to that vision.
Yeah, I would second that. I think it's really important before you think about really entertaining any kind of, let's say, partnership or something like that. Let's just say in my case, it's always been the financing. You better have a business plan, sourcing use of funds, how they're going to be utilized. It's kind of hard to predict sometimes your pro forma out your cash flow. your burn rates and your expenses and like, but you need to put, it used to be called pen to paper, right? Because that will actually help you formulate your business plan and your presentations and all those pieces of it. Because once you do that, then you can put it in an executive summary. When you do that, then you can speak to it. And what you do is you put something in paper and that they can read. But when you actually are discussing it with folks, then they hear the passion that comes through and what you want to do. So that's the other piece of it, because you got to be passionate about what you are about to ask them for, right? For money. And you got to be passionate about what your business is and what you're going to do to drive it to be extremely successful.
And just to add upon that, you also try to find business partners who are strengths complement your weakness, or just where you're not strong as in. And so for you, Jim, like you just said, you put pen to paper. I'm more of the visualization guy, talk about this is a vision. And that will make a good business partner, because where I'm not so good at putting it down or documenting, that's where your strength would be. And that would be a good partnership, because together we can work on that.
Yep, agree.
Those are both really great points. With my own experience, probably one of the worst partnerships I was in is I assumed a lot of those things. And what I mean, assuming it, I bought a beauty school of all things. I was in education, and it made actually sense. And my potential partner was very experienced in this world and very familiar with all of those things. And I had assumed somewhat that what the roles would be afterwards. In other words, there's only two owners. I'm clearly the finance and the operations type of guy. I don't know a lot about cutting hair or applying makeup, but she was perfect. But unfortunately, once we closed and moved along, her idea of and work ethic was very different than really what was needed for the business to be successful long term. But it changed overnight as to what was said, and so versus what happened. And I guess I'm reaffirming or emphasizing the things you're saying, in that it should be in writing, it should be visual. You take your pick on it, but Robert, you have a good point. You draw the picture, pull it out, and if anything, you have at least people shaking their head that that's the direction you're going, because eventually you do have to put it in writing.
Because communication is key, just like in marriage or anything else that you do. You have to have a good line of communication, how you're going to communicate. It can't always be the best information, best, things that you can say, hey, we want to talk about the good stuff, not the bad. You end up usually talking about the bad stuff more than anything else, right? The things that are not working, the things that didn't come to fruition, or, money is always a question. Those are things that never go away. But you should still have a line of communication open and know how you communicate. Is it by phone, text, email, and make sure that, get back to each other in a timely fashion, right? Just make sure that if you send me a message, I'm gonna check my email so often, I'm gonna get back to you on that, so we can make decisions in real time and not 2-3 days later, and then say, hey, we missed that threshold.
Right. You haven't really touched on trust for a moment. And let me just, and the reason I say that, in that same partnership, I had to go to the bank and change the authorized signers on the checking accounts because it raised some serious concerns about the cash of the business going in a direction that it shouldn't. So I lost that trust, and in exchange, really, to compensate for that, I created some additional checks and balances, and checking invoices closely, or that. But talk maybe a little bit about the personality of that person that you're looking at joining you in a business, and how much that goes into it. Jim, you mentioned these were investors that were your friends, also, or business associates, I'll call them. But how do you look at that personality trust factor?
Well, in this one, they were friends. In the previous ones, they were most of them were institutional type investors. And what you tried to find there was someone that believed in it was from your space, kind of like whether it was software, medical, whatever it was, someone that understood your space. Very important to understand your space versus just saying, I'm going to throw money at it, because then there's no value add there, right? You try to find an investor or a partner that has value add. And whether that is dollars and understands your business and that can help you and all their experiences they bring, or someone that's with operational, like in your case. But at the same time, they've got to bring the value add to the partnership also. Right. And that's extremely important, because you're both are in this thing together. And as I always say, I want to know who's in the foxhole with me, because inevitably there will be times that it's tough, and you've got to know who's in the foxhole with you.
Yeah. Robert, some comments on that?
You know, you like to give people the benefit of the doubt always, right? Especially when you're doing a business. But the thing that I've learned most importantly, the trust is in the documents, the operating agreement, right? Because you agree to operate and do certain things as a business partner, as a business. And so you should find individuals that you can trust to uphold their end of that and make sure that they conduct themselves in business, you know, in business accordingly. Things happen. You know, everybody says money does strange things to people, and it does. And so you can't be negligent and not having a good operating agreement with those individuals that you're doing business with. Make sure you all agree to the operating agreement and know what the terms and conditions are, and trust that, you know, once we go into do business, that we abide by that.
Very good point. And you've raised some terminology here that might be unfamiliar to some folks. And one of those was an operating agreement. And then you said some things about terms and conditions within an operating agreement. And maybe the question I should have is, I'll pose it this way. It's pretty easy to go down to the state and create a partnership. Right. Yeah, I think you fill out a couple of forms and pay something.
$45, $200, and you're done.
But you're alluding to an operating agreement that maybe, do I need to go see a lawyer, or did you involve a lawyer? Maybe you two could talk about that.
Well, operating agreement probably is best served by at least getting some legal counseling, you know, because it is a binding document, right? To hold all parties accountable for that. The language of it, you know, you can put some together, but there's some pretty standard language. And within the business of the industry, you should make sure that you have those industry specific language in there as well. Because let's say that, you know, from the insurance perspective, you have 3 business partners, they're all married, and one of the partners dies. Well, does the spouse automatically now become your business partner? And her vision might not be the same as the husband's, or the husband become the business partner now because the wife was the business partner. You know, you want to protect against those things, because it might be something that that person doesn't want to be involved with. They just want to get out, or you're afraid that they might cause roadblocks and things like that. So you want to make sure that you have that type of language in the agreements to address that, and make sure that, you know, you anticipate it, and it's not a problem going forward.
So you did go to a lawyer and help you work through that. And that's important for everyone to understand, is there are some things that are too complex or that have such great risk, meaning if your operating agreement isn't well articulated, well worded to protect you, it could be a problem at some point in the future. Jim?
Yeah, I've always used attorneys, obviously, because I always want it down, and I want it documented, I want it written, I want it in there, so that way that is a roadmap to really things going well. It's a roadmap. Things going bad. It's a roadmap. So you take care of you take care of some of the what if scenarios in that, but it's the roles, responsibilities, the terms, the conditions, the buyout provisions, potentially, like Robert was saying, if something happens to somebody, you got all kinds of provisions, you know, buy sell agreements on the side. All these things take care of this, but you got to have the document that then is really the living document that really tells you how this partnership's going to go on a go forward basis, because as we all know, when it goes, if it goes bad, everyone's going to tear apart this agreement and try to do it. So that's going to be your ability to then say to this agreement, saying, we got to stand on this. This is where it stands. And both attorneys, theirs and yours, will then agree to this thing. And then it gives you the formula to get to the point where you want to get to, whatever that is. But there's provisions in it that allow you to walk through these steps.
Right. We'll call it the rules for the partnership. Operating just means, how are we going to do business on an ongoing basis? And then when something happens, for example, a partner dies, or a partner just wants to go do something else. In my situation, I was bought out, but there was very particular wording in the operating agreement to protect me and to make certain that legally we followed everything and I moved down the road.
Right.
The partners literally wanted a clean divorce, if I keep using that word, but I think it's very appropriate.
It's absolutely appropriate. And then you got fair value for your interest. That was the key
Right.
piece, is you have to get fair value for your interest at that specific date and time.
Right.
Also, the operating agreement, if you're looking for investors and some point in time, maybe financing from financial institutions, so that you are serious about your business, that is organized well, and that there is some type of structure to it. So if they decide to invest or loan you funds, that they can be rest assured of how it's going to operate and how things can be handled if certain instances occur.
And you want to make sure you have your investor rights agreements. You want to have your shareholder agreements. You want to have all those pieces of it that really lead to it on different aspects of your business when you're going through different events. So you want to make sure you raise another round of financing. Do they participate pari passu, or the same their deals, or if there's an exit strategy, how do you structure the exit? Do they get their dollars first? The layering, all those things. Because it may be, the structure of it could be such, but the investor rights agreement is really what dictates the dissolution, I would say, or the distribution of the funds thereafter. It's
important in the operating agreement for voting also, and voting has the impact of changing how you're viewed in the company. It could alter your expectations. It can do a lot of different things. And you want to look in your operating agreement for voting rights. And what I mean by that, sometimes if you're a 50% owner, you have 50% of the votes. And sometimes you may have an operating agreement that says something different. And it can.
Absolutely.
I've had clients sign operating agreements without reading them.
Yep. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, and always regretted it.
Yes.
I might add. So if I was, I'm at the table and I'm asking some questions, you pointed out some good questions on goals, objectives, exit, and that's important. A lot of folks ask me right now, what's your exit strategy when I'm looking at certain things? And I won't be working 20 years from now. It's no secret.
Right.
So I do have a shorter exit strategy versus I'll call it a younger management group that has a 25-year horizon. So it's an incredibly good point. But what I'm really asking, so you have a CPA, you probably talk to and a lawyer. But I think good leaders at times always have their, we'll call it informal advisors. And as you're looking at a partner and looking at going into a relationship, do you reach out, or do you have a second source just from I'll call it a gut check with partnerships, because it's so consequential once you enter a partnership? Robert, why don't you start? Go ahead, sir.
You always want to run stuff off of people that you trust to give you good advice, right? Because you might think you know it all, or you might think that this is the right thing to do, but you exist in your own bubble. And sometimes it's just good to get someone who was removed from that honest assessment of the situation, so they can give you their opinion. I think that any successful person, even kings back in the day, had people they sought counsel for, right? Presidents, anybody, CEOs of companies, they all have someone that they can talk to and get some advice from. So I think it's important to have someone just to run things off of, or just to vent sometimes, because you need to vent. You might not want to vent to people that you're working with because they're the ones that, are on your nerves, right? But you need that outlet to do that, so you can have that other observed opinion about it, and then go back if you need to and reassess what's going on, and then make the right decision.
It's a very good point. And Jim, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, whether it's an individual investor or a institutional investor, I've always, although the last one I didn't need to, but all the ones prior to, I've always done some kind of a referral. I wanted to find out from other folks that had invested, they invested with. And so most of the institutional folks out there had never had a problem with giving you names of folks that had an experience with them. My whole thing was I always wanted to get a good experience, but kind of give me a medium experience if you can, because not everything's always perfect. Let me just tell you. And so you always try to get those, but on the individual basis, absolutely use your network of folks that know these people and find out what kind of deals they're in, what kind of partner they were, and how they how they were treated in the partnership, if you can. That's what you do. You got to find out what it was like, because let's put it bluntly, right now you're in the honeymoon stage, just getting courted. It's right afterwards where you find out, right? And that's the harder part, but you want to get as much done on due diligence in advance.
Due diligence is a fancy way to say homework.
Yep.
Do that homework. Ask a lot of questions, and with those advisors, every great leader, the president has a board of advisors. All CEOs will have advisors around them, whether formal or informal, to ask those questions and help each one of us to filter through the options, the pros and cons, and they may see things you don't.
They bring to the table experiences that you may have not had, and that's always good.
It's served me well over the years to ask those I, as you point out, trust, and felt as though they've given a good experience. Are there any particular terms? Robert, you again mentioned terms and conditions. And with the social equity, we know one of the terms is that you must be a 51% owner of the partnership. And you also must have a clause, which means a sentence, a paragraph that says you can't be removed. The other partners can't gang up on you or sell the dispensary out from underneath you. So are there other terms or conditions that you see as being, more acute or you'd like folks to focus in on or think about?
Probably responsibilities and who is in charge of that and who helps lead that journey, right? Because you want, if you have 3 business partners, you each should have a certain segment of the business that you're ultimately responsible for. Even though one person might be the operator of the business or the managing partner, you have your certain areas that you should be able to take responsibility to make sure it happens, to move forward, and then inform the other business partners what's going on. That keeps them stepping on each other's toes, and then you can defer to that partner if there's something that someone approaches with, say, financing. And Jim and I are in business. Well, I'm definitely going to defer to Jim. I said, listen, even though I'm the partner, that's Jim's arena. He does all that for us, and he's the one you need to talk to. So I think you definitely need to carve out your areas of responsibility and make sure that you adhere to those very well.
Great points, Jim.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think it's critical that you do that, but I also think it's, how the reporting of how you're going to do this, right? Because I think it's critical that can't everyone just go their separate ways. And everyone's got to get, whether you're all in the same room, whatever, take some time, have a weekly, monthly, whatever it is meeting, even if it's just for a half hour, to make sure everyone's on the same page all the time, because it's really understanding what everyone else is doing, because they may see something you don't, you may see something they don't. And I think it's really important that you work as one as best you possibly can to understand where things are going. Just like, when you have, standardized, when you have a company, you want to have weekly meetings with your executive team, right? Whether that's a Monday morning or a Friday, whatever it is, it's like, you have a sales team, you do the same thing. You'll want to make sure everyone's on the same page and playing from the same playbook. And I think that's critical. So that's one of the pieces that I would definitely do. And then, if you're outside investors, then you have your standard reporting package that you want to go through, because it's a great experience and it's something that, gets you in a good habit of doing it.
Those are great points. I've seen operating agreements where they define the vice president of sales or vice president or manager and have rather lengthy descriptions of what the expectation is on a outcomes or a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to have as much as you possibly can for the duties, responsibilities, expectations, all that stuff. And if someone is going to be in charge of sales, here's all the things that entail under sales. So that way there's no ambiguity going forward. It's critical.
Robert, does everyone work as hard as you?
You would hope so, and maybe some people might think I don't work hard enough, because it's all perspective, right? But you have to know your business partners and what their effort that they want to put into the business before you and really get it up and running. Because like you said for yourself, you're not trying to work that hard, and I don't blame you. And so if I already know that, my expectation is already has been put in place for you, and I shouldn't get mad because hey, Jeff is not working hard. Well, he already told me he wasn't going to work that hard, so I know. So how do we make up for that? Do we pick up the slack, or do we hire someone to fill in the blank slots that you're not fulfilling? How's that going to go? You should know that up front. So, but you hope that everybody who is invested into the business works just as hard and harder than yourself.
I think you're right. I think, Jim, were you? Did I?
Well, I just think you're gonna, if you're lucky enough to get one of these licenses, think about this. This is a startup organization, right? And startups are hard. They're really hard. And this is a startup organization where you're just going from 0 to 100, and so you're going to be throwing a lot of stuff. So, the startups are hard. There's challenges. There's the ups and downs of on a daily basis, the emotional side of it. So be prepared for that. But yeah, that's one of the pieces that I would say, because you're really going into a startup mode and you just know it's 24/7.
Right. And it's important to set that expectation from a work perspective, because not everybody's going to work like you, and those around you may work twice as hard, and those around you may work twice as less and want twice as much pay, of course.
Right. Of course.
Oh, I had a client that after they organized their company, and this was they're fairly new in business and organization, and one of the partners, as soon as they formed it and had their bank account, was very excited to have a credit card. And they only had maybe $1,000 in the bank, and I was doing it for helping some folks out, but at that point they had to create or get a company meeting of the partners, pull the cards, because they went to this individual, and the expectation was, as I have a card I can spend. And for whatever reason, he forgot you got to get the revenue first, but you get the point.
You can't play the float forever.
Yeah. So we could be fair to say that experience has really changed the way you look at potential partners and the questions that you ask.
100% for me.
Oh yeah. Well, you have to take your bumps and bruises, right? You learn from everything that you do. Especially as Jim said, this is a startup. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. Even with people who have experience, there's going to be some mistakes. So you just try to apply your past ventures, and like for myself, I worked in corporate America for a long time, and I try to take that experience and translate it to the businesses that I operate. And I know what was successful and made those companies successful, and I know that things I could have done better. But you try to avert as much as you can, but it's always something's going to happen, right? You know, something's always going to go down, and so you just have to do your best to minimize the damage.
That's a great point, Robert. Well, any last words of advice? Maybe in summary, we've spent some quality time reviewing questions to ask partners, how to potentially avoid messy partnerships, which we did by virtue of setting expectations, talking about goals, lining out your thoughts on your operating agreement, and contacting legal. But we've received a lot of great information today. Last words, or to summarize for those out there trying to understand the art of selecting a business partner?
Well, outside of all the legal documents and all the responsibilities, you should get to know your partners on a personal level. You should know their families. You should know what they like, the dislikes, because these are people that, you know, outside of your marriage or your family, these are people that you can spend a lot of time to, and you have some risk and reward with them. And so you want to know what makes them tick and how they feel about certain things. And it's hard to say that you will go in business with just strangers all the time, because most of the time that's what's happening. But you should at least have some type of knowing of that person and some type of like. Because if you just like the person you're in business with, you shouldn't be in business with them, because they don't probably have your own values. So, you know, take the time to learn who you're doing business with, and just outside of the business aspect of it.
It's fantastic advice.
Yep. Agree. Yeah, I would say this. I would say the same thing. I would say that, you know, do your homework beforehand. Try to get to know them, understand it, because like I said, it's you're encountering some tumultuous times ahead, and you want to know, like I said, who's in the foxhole with you. But enjoy it also, because there's the reward that can be there at the end is significant, and it's a lot of fun. I'm not gonna. It's rewarding when it's your baby and you can take it and make it successful. That's where the reward is. And a lot of people think it's, and sometimes yeah, the financial stuff is great, but it's also the reward that you can also provide to other folks along the way, your employees, right? The community, all these things, those are rewards that go beyond just the financial side of it. And they were rewarding to you that make you feel a lot better. And so that's significant, because you can impact people's lives significantly by doing that. And so that's one of the things I found is being an entrepreneur. You can impact people's lives, just be not only yours, but other people's lives by doing it. Because those people are also reliant upon you to be successful when they get their paycheck every Friday or every other Friday, right? They're dependent upon you. So you have responsibilities. So you impact other people's lives as well, not just your own, you know, they're impacting other people's lives. And so it's very rewarding in that respect. So, but yes, do your homework, know your partners, and all those pieces of it, and try to get to know them in advance as much as you possibly can. But at the end of the day, sometimes, you know, listen to folks, but at the end of the day, your gut will tell you sometimes, and sometimes your intuition will tell you. So don't be afraid of that either. Sometimes your gut feeling just tells you. So take all the data, take everything, and then sometimes you just got to rely on your gut. So that if you're a good businessman, you've had experiences, sometimes your gut will tell you exactly where to go. So that's all I have. But, you know, I'm open for any kind of comments, want to get a hold of me. I'm free anytime. I think, you know, my information's out there, so you can get a hold of me anytime.
Wonderful.
Same for me. So if you ever need any advice on insurance or anything like that, I'm sure Jeff will have some information afterwards that I could put my business on there, and I'll be more than happy to give you advice or put you in the right direction and help you out.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Robert. Mita will have your contact information and your email address posted and available for those participants that would like to reach out, get some additional information, hopefully engage you on a professional level, because we bring the top quality talent in the state, I believe, to Mita, and provide the opportunity for you to judge for yourself. Where do I want to go? Who do I want to engage with? And I think that, as they've pointed out, that's very important. Let's have some fun. Let's do work with people we like to be around. That's the great thing about this industry, eh?
Yep. Totally agree.
Yes, it is.
Well, I
Well,
think the industry was built on fun, wasn't it?
That's correct. So that's a great way to put it. So I get that a lot from folks that haven't seen me in a while, and they ask me what I do. And when I say cannabis, it's always first a snicker, and then, are you having fun? So it is fun, and that's a great approach to take when you're looking at partners and how you want to create your culture. So thank you both for joining us, and we look forward to your continued participation with MITA.
Thank
Great.
you. Appreciate
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks,
Okay.
Robert.
Take
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.